You're listening to 8158 Stories of Sacrifice, where we honor the bravery of the first responders and the families who stand behind them. Real people, real stories, real heroes. This is 8158.
In this episode, we sit down with RedBeard the Medic, an EMT with over a decade of experience and a passion for EMS education and mentorship. He shares his journey through fire service, mental health struggles, and the challenges of balancing family life with a demanding career. We discuss PTSD, imposter syndrome, and the importance of breaking the stigma around mental health in first responders. RedBeard also opens up about a pivotal moment in 2021 when he almost didn't make it, and how support from others helped him find a new purpose. Tune in for an honest and impactful conversation about resilience, service, and the realities of EMS. Welcome, RedBeard the Medic.
Welcome back, everyone, to 8158 Podcast Stories of Sacrifice. Today we have an awesome guest, a very honorable guest. He's an EMT, and his name is RedBeard the Medic. I think you're going to enjoy this episode, and hopefully you guys have something to take away from this. He has a lot of knowledge, and he is somebody who can be, I would say, like a mentor, so to speak. Somebody you could talk to if you have any issues with your EMT or EMS, any kind of thing like that. He can guide you through. So hopefully you can take that away from this story. And with that being said, I welcome RedBeard the Medic. How's it going today, buddy?
Oh, not too bad. Thank you for having me on. I'm excited to do this. Been a pretty good day.
Pretty good day. Did you work today? Did you have a long day?
No, I worked at 24 yesterday, and I only ran 2 calls, but unfortunately, both of those were after midnight, and I didn't get back to the base until like 2:30 this morning, so I didn't get to bed till like 4.
Oh my gosh.
Yeah, it happens. I mean, it's the perks of the job, right? What do you do?
Yeah, I totally understand that. I mean, when I was driving trucks, I drove at night. I drove 3 to 3 in the afternoon till 3 in the morning when I was driving for Ruan, and so I know it's hard to get to sleep late at when you get home so early. And I also drove for FedEx, and sometimes I'd go to work at 9 o'clock and I wouldn't get done until 9 o'clock in the morning. So.
Yeah, I've been fortunate enough that I've kind of adapted to my schedule. I've worked 24-hour shifts literally all of my career, so pretty much my entire adult life, as you'll find whenever we get into the stuff. So it's one of those things where I'm used to it, but still it sucks. Like after 3 o'clock in the morning, I'm not so nice.
Just dragging and you're grumpy. And
Mm-hmm.
All right, RedBeard. So we're going to go into some background here. Let's start with your journey into EMS. What drew you to this career?
So, actually, I didn't want anything to do with EMS whenever I started my career. I was a firefighter, literally like the day I graduated from high school, I became a firefighter. And that was what I wanted to do. That was what I had focused my mind to. And I was working as a security guard doing some other stuff while I was going through my Fire 1 and 2 classes and things like that. And I didn't really care for EMS. I got my first responder just to look better to the fire department. I went to EMT school just to look better to the fire department. I went full-time with the fire department, and I did that for about a decade. And some things happened. City politics got in the way. There were some other things that went on, but I mean, it is what it is. So I jumped on an ambulance, and I've been doing it ever since. I fell in love with the EMS aspect of the job, so I went to EMS. I got my paramedic, and here I am today, 10 years later.
So, what drew you to the EMS? What was it about that uh, drove you to want to actually do that, since you were trying to avoid it?
So with fire, when you're dealing with patients, you're literally there to assist EMS, right? So you're there for a lift assist. You're there for 30 minutes tops. You get a brief history of the patient. You don't really talk to them a whole lot, and then you go back to bed, and it's all done. It's all over. Like there's something to be said for being able to go to bed after 30 minutes of dealing with somebody. But what I found was that I enjoyed actually connecting with my patients, and you can learn a lot about life and about yourself, especially from like the elderly population. And I think the connection is what I enjoyed the most about it. Being there for somebody in their time of need, because you're there in some of the worst instances of somebody's life, and they expect you to come in and bring some sort of a calm to that. And so the more I got into that, and the more I got to talking to people about that, the more I found that I actually had a knack for that. I've always been a talker. My mom used to tell me I had to get gab, and I don't ever meet a stranger. So it worked out for me.
So originally, you had actually planned on joining enlisting the military. Instead, you ended up in EMS and fire. Can you share what happened in that situation?
Yeah. My mother happened. So I was talking to recruiters. I had taken the ASVAB. I had done all the stuff that I needed to do. This was, of course, I graduated in 05, and so everything that was going on in Iraq and Afghanistan and all of that was just, hitting a fever pitch. It was a really rough time. And my mother was convinced that if I joined the military, I was going to get shipped overseas and I wasn't going to come home. And that was what she said. She said, "You're going to go over there and you're going to get yourself killed. I don't want you to do that." And she threw this big fit and she cried about it. It was this whole big thing. And so I was like, okay, I won't go into the military. You should have seen the look on her face when I told her that I joined the fire department. "You're bound and determined to get yourself killed, aren't you?" "No, Mom, I just want to do something with my life, and that's what I chose to do."
Right. Yeah. It's the lesser of the two evils, but you still did something with it. And, it's something that's honorable, and something that it's one of those things that it just takes a special kind of person to do.
It's turned into a really good career. It has been good for me as a person, for my growth as a human. I've always heard it said that a man's worth can only be defined in what he does for other people. And I've tried to live by that.
Mm-hmm.
So that's where I find a lot of my worth, is with what I do.
Right.
So when I still enjoy what I do, I enjoy it just like I did whenever I started.
Right. Now, do you have any stories about your EMS experiences or anything like that?
Oh, I could sit here for hours and I could sit here for hours and tell you stories about EMS. I have constantly had a black cloud over my head. So from the time I got my first responder, way back when, like 20 years ago, I have been the guy that if it's bad, if it's gnarly, if it's funny, hilarious, I'm the guy that gets that call. It's been the way that it's been for as long as I can remember. For example, my very first call as a first responder, literally the ink wasn't even dry on the certificate yet. The very first call that I got was a man who had been stabbed in a trailer park. They drove him to a country club, which was about 10 miles away. And we responded with an engine with the fire department. And by the time we got to him, we were getting ready to move him into the helicopter, and he went into cardiac arrest. And so that was my big welcome to EMS moment. And it's just been constant ever since. As far as funny ones go, she probably doesn't think it's that funny, but one time I was called for a rather large lady that was cooking bacon, actually, naked in a trailer house. And she took a step backwards, and the floor was soft. Well, when she took that step backwards, she falls into the floor and gets stuck.
Oh.
So we had to cut the floor from around her to get her out.
Oh my gosh.
And I know that she was embarrassed. Like, I totally get that, but it's one of those that I look back on and, like, it wasn't funny at the time because I'm like, what are we going to do? Like, how are we going to get this lady out of here? Right. Like, she's going to be real excited when she sees us bringing saws in here to cut her floor.
Right.
But that's what we had to do. It was a good outcome. She was fine. She just got stuck in the floor for a little bit. So, I mean, that's been my career, man. Like, there are moments that I look back and I'm like, how did I get here? What is going on? Like, who hates me to the point that I've got all this stuff that had happened over the years? It's going to make my book very interesting.
I just got this vivid image in my head of this situation.
I promise, however you imagined it, it was 100 times worse in person.
Oh, I can imagine. I can imagine.
Oh, man, yeah. That was one of the funny ones, though.
So now, in your family and personal life, you've experienced loss from your younger age with the passing of your brother. How do you think that shaped you?
So it kind of desensitized me to death, I'm going to be honest with you. Like, most people process death differently than I do. It's one of those things where, like, I realize that it's an inevitability. Like, we're all going to die. Something is going to end our lives eventually. Mm-hmm. My brother, like that you mentioned, he passed away when I was 3. My mom and my dad were older by the time I came along, so I think I was maybe 23 years old when my mom died. 22, 23 years old when my mom passed away, so I lost her at a young age. And then Dad was several years later. I was about 29, 30, but it was one of those things that, like, my mom's death absolutely wrecked me, but anybody else's just, it's kind of like, you know what, it's one of those things that happens. And I think that it's made me uniquely equipped to do this job because I don't view it the same way as everybody else does. For example, like, my wife and I could be talking, and she could look at the obituary and she'd be like, "Oh, did you know about so and so?" And I'm like, "Yeah, they're dead," and that's how I say it. And she was like, "Well, you could have softened the blow a little bit."
Yeah.
But I don't process death that way. I don't do funerals. I try not to go to funerals if I don't absolutely have to. The last one I went to was my mother-in-law's, and so, you know, just with the amount of death I've been around, I've been to a ton of them, and I don't want to go. Like, I don't have a reason to go. I want to remember you how you were in life, not how you were in death.
Yeah.
So.
Yeah, I can understand that from your perspective. You know, growing up with your dad after your parents had divorced, how did that dynamic influence your path?
Okay, so my dad was my best friend. I'll start off by saying that. So, like, we didn't have the typical, like, father-son relationship. Like, I would come home from school, and instead of, "Hey, son, how was your day? Like, I love you," it was, he'd flip me off and call me a short-legged fat boy. Just jokingly. Like, we were always laughing. And it's kind of the same dynamic that my son and I have now. My son's 16 now, and be 17 this year, actually. And so we have kind of that same dynamic. My wife loves that, I can assure you. But, it was one of those things where dad let me have my freedom. So I got my wild streak out early in my young adult life and my adolescent life. Um, I partied pretty hard when I was younger, and dad just kind of let me flourish in that and let me see that it wasn't all it was cracked up to be. Uh,
That's sure.
so I mean, my dad was my best friend though. Like that, there was nothing I couldn't tell him. There was no judgment ever, nothing of the sort. He just was very open about his life and about his upbringing, and trying not to have me learn from the mistakes that he made, or like learn from my own mistakes and learning from the mistakes that he made. That didn't happen because I'm stubborn, but
Right.
I'm pretty sure that my dad stuck around for as long as he did. He was sick for a long time. I'm pretty sure he stuck around as long as he did to make sure that I got my head on straight and pulled my head out of my rear end.
Right.
So
So you have 5 kids and you're a grandfather. Uh, what has fatherhood taught you, and how do you balance the demands of EMS with your family life?
fatherhood has taught me that the more I think I know about the human condition, the more I think I know about somebody, the less I actually know. Um, we still learn about our children every single day.
Right.
Um, we help them grow and we try to teach them things, and the things that we try to be who we needed when we were children. um, and life is short, and childhood is short. And so you try to enjoy the moments while you have them. But granted, so to the point of, balancing the demands of EMS with family life, like, listen, balance wasn't a thing for a long time. I am very career and goal oriented, often to my detriment. And that trickles down to the family and to the kids and to the grandkids. I missed out on a lot of things, when the kids were younger and whenever. So I'll put it this way: both my daughter and my son took their first steps while I was at work.
Mm.
I heard my daughter say "dada," which was her first word, on the phone. Um, so I missed out on some of those big milestones. I missed out on football games. I missed out on cheer events. I missed out on a lot of stuff because I was working. And so balance wasn't a thing. I've since learned that. So what I do now is, like, I take my PTO time in the fall, and I didn't miss a single football game for my son last year, and I'm at every game that I can be at for my daughter. So
Okay.
balancing is hard. You have to be willing to sacrifice some things to get to where you want to be. But that said, once you get to where you want to be, then you can take a step back, and you can, spend time. And unfortunately, you do a lot of catching up. Like, you
Yeah.
do a lot of making up for lost time. So now I take my days off. I take my PTO time. Before, I didn't. I would never take a day off. So that was what balance looked like to me back then. Now it's totally different.
Right. So since you've sacrificed so much of your time with your family because of work, uh, what advice would you give to others in the same situation?
Take the time off. You are working in a job that will replace you the second the ink is dry on your death certificate. They won't think twice about it because they can't. Life goes on long after you're gone, right? Life is short. Take your days off. Spend time with your family. Don't do what I did. Like, I'm trying to help you learn from the mistakes that I made. um, because it's time lost that you can't get back. That's growth of your child that you don't see. And once you miss out on those things, you can't, press a rewind button and go back and relive those because, to my knowledge, time travel hasn't been invented yet. So, don't dedicate yourself to the job in such a way that it works to your detriment. Make that a positive.
Right.
Like, show up for your kids because they remember when you don't.
Right.
I promise.
Yeah, I can imagine. I miss a lot with my kids too. I have two girls. One is 27 and the other one is 26. And I missed out on pretty much their entire childhood. So now I'm just making up time.
And it says something about you that you're hello. It says something about you that you're making an effort to do that, because a lot of people don't. A lot of people are just content in not ever making the effort to do that. Get down. Um, and so they just they keep working the way that they have been for all their lives, and then they wonder why their kids don't have anything to do with them.
Right.
So I think you're doing the right things. I really do.
Right.
And I, for the most part, like, my kids understand why I did what I did because it was how I made a living.
Right.
But it's like they say, don't get so busy making a living that you forget to make a life. That's the truth.
That's for sure. That is the truth. It's a hard lesson to learn for everybody listening. By his advice and my advice, it is a very hard lesson to learn, and family is very important. You do not want to miss out on the opportunities you have with your children. I know that from experience. Redbeard knows that from experience.
Sure do.
So now moving on to mental health and overcoming some struggles. You've been open about your struggles with PTSD. When did you realize you needed help, and what steps did you take?
So I actually didn't realize that I needed help. Um, a doctor that I was working for did that for me. So I'm gonna back up a little bit. Um, I had this, and we'll talk about that here in a minute. But um, I had this mental break, and I realized that I was getting back into the same shape that I was previously with my depression, and I just had this general malaise about me. I didn't want to do anything. I didn't want to go anywhere. I didn't want to talk to anybody. I would go to work. I would come home, and I wouldn't socialize. Like, people wouldn't even know that I existed for a period of time, just because I didn't care. Like, I was ready to check out, and I knew that. And so I actually reached out to a therapist here in the town that I'm at, and I went to see them for a while, and that kind of played itself out. And then I went to see this one that was like first responder oriented, because you kind of want to connect with people that have your background or that are uniquely equipped to handle your specific situation. And
People
so
that
I reached out to them. I talked to a psychiatrist. Trace was really great. We were talking about how the antidepressants, SSRIs, weren't really working. And so he tried me on an SNRI, Cymbalta, and I take that, and he uncovered a lot of things in my past that I had forgotten about, that I shoved in the back of my mind, and diagnosed me with PTSD. And it's been, one day at a time. Like, it doesn't ever go away, but it's more manageable now than it was then. So,
right. I mean, it got so bad that in 2021 you had a plan for a suicide, but credit COVID for and a babysitter for saving your life. Can you walk us through what happened and what changed for you?
yeah. So, I mean, I can't really pinpoint it to one event. I think it was just cumulative stress over the years, things that had happened, since my childhood and on and on and on, and it just built up because I had this problem where I didn't like to talk about my struggles because back when I was coming up in EMS, it was one of those things that was like super super taboo. Like you didn't want to talk about it because you were afraid that there was this negative stigma, excuse me,
Yes.
a negative stigma surrounding that, and I think that there still is to some degree, but we're getting better. But you were afraid that they would, chalk you up as being crazy and send you packing, and then you wouldn't have a job anymore.
Right.
So, in 2021, I had left EMS because I just kind of become disenchanted with the whole thing, and I went to work at a clinic. Not realizing that I really kind of lost my purpose whenever I went to work at the clinic. I was working for a doctor as a medical assistant. And like I said, I can't pinpoint this to one event. I really do believe that it was the cumulative stress. And I formulated a plan. My wife was going to be out of town for work. The kids were going to go to the babysitters. And I was going to sit on the edge of the bed. And I was going to put a pistol in my mouth and I was going to finish it off. I was done. I was checked out. I was tired. And my kids didn't even know this until just recently, and I don't think my daughter ever really knew it, so she's listening. She's hearing this for the first time. I legitimately was ready to check out. I can't tell you why. I just know that I was good one day and I wasn't the next. And so the time came for the kids to go to the babysitter. Well, the babysitter caught COVID. And she said, I can't watch the kids because I've got COVID. I was angry. So angry that, and what I passed it off as to my family was that I needed time to myself because nobody knew what I was going to do. Yeah. They were just going to come home and find me gone. And, looking back on that now, I've realized how selfish that sounds, but that's where I was.
Yeah.
I wasn't thinking straight. And so I went to work that next week with the doctor, and I walked in the door and she says, "What the hell's wrong with you?" I'm like, "What do you mean, Dr. Gully? Like, what the hell's wrong with me? What the hell's wrong with you? Nothing's wrong with me." And she says, "No, something's wrong. We're going to talk after work." And so we had a conversation after work. She did all the depression tests, and she diagnosed me with depression, put me on, I believe, Zoloft to begin with. And that was where this whole thing started. What I found is that once I got back into EMS, I had found out that I really lost my purpose when I went to that clinic. My place is on the ambulance helping people. That's what makes me happy. That's what makes me tick. That's the joy of my life next to the kids and the wife, so, and the grandkids. But I genuinely enjoy what I do, and without that purpose and without that renewed perspective, I don't know what would have happened.
Yeah.
But the biggest change of all of them is that I'm more open about that. When we do EMT classes, for example, the one class that I want to teach every time is well-being of the EMT. And I tell the same story to my students and tell them, you're not alone. Many people are there or have been there. But we got to talk about it. We've got to end the negative stigma behind it because it's the only way that we're ever going to grow. So I'm thankful that. Sorry about that. I am thankful that that happened because it really renewed my perspective on things.
Right. Now, did you even give it any thought of the impact it would have had on your family, or you just didn't even give it any consideration?
I wasn't thinking about that. I wasn't thinking about them at all, really. I was just thinking about myself. I was ready to end it, and that's how I was going to do it. That was that. I was checked out. I don't know what would have happened had I done it. I don't want to know. Uh, Looking back on it now, like it's really hard to even think about that. But it's something that it's always in my mind. Like I was one twist of fate away from not being here anymore.
Right.
And if I was just talking about how upset I was that I had missed out on all that time with my kids, who am I to rob them of that time
Right.
moving forward? So
Yeah, and I'm glad that it worked out the way that it did, and you got to remember the amount of lives that you've saved since then, the people that you've helped along the way. Without that, the outcome could have been different than anybody else.
absolutely. I'm thankful for every opportunity at life that I've been given. I'm thankful for every breath that I take. I'm thankful for every opportunity that I have to get on the ambulance and do what I do, because I guess in some small way it heals the part of me each time I do it.
Right.
And that's really difficult to explain to somebody that's never been in those shoes, because it's a calling. I believe that. I believe that I'm I guess you would call me religious. I do believe that I was called by God to do this job.
Right.
And I think that's what makes me effective at it.
Okay. So, what strategies help you to compartmentalize your traumas that are common to first responders? How do you work through that?
So, and the way that I've always explained it to people, and I hate explaining it like this because it really sounds terrible. It sounds awful, right?
Mhm.
But when you're dealing with a situation where there's massive trauma and you've got, all this stuff that you have to take care of, you can't be focused on, oh my gosh, that's a human laying there and they're, bleeding to death and all of this. What you have to focus on is the fact that this is now a job. This is a series of checkboxes that you have to mitigate and reassess and do more and reassess. So you put that at the back of your mind. And so that's what compartmentalization is all about whenever it comes to that. Like, I have to check my emotions at the door sometimes, because if I lead with my emotions, then I'm not going to make rational clinical decisions. If I'm thinking only emotionally, then I'm not having rational thought. And so what I tell people is like, so when you compartmentalize these things, understand that you're putting this in a space in your brain, but it doesn't go away. It's there. And muscle memory is one of those things where in the nervous system is an incredible thing, because what happens is the body remembers these traumas, and whenever you're put under that same stress again, it's like, oh no, this is how we reacted to it last time. So the stuff in your compartments are always there. But over time, think of it like an ice tray. So if you have an ice tray, for those of us that are old enough to remember, you had to fill the ice tray up and put it in the freezer, and that's how you got ice before the days of ice makers. If you started filling one side of the ice maker, once that got the ice tray, once that got filled, it would trickle to the other compartments, the other ice cubes. And so our brains are a lot similar to that, because eventually those compartments are going to fill.
Right.
And when they do, you have to offload those. So my best advice is, if you feel like those compartments are overflowing, talk to somebody, anybody, somebody that understands. Be that a therapist, a loved one, a coworker. Granted, not every coworker, because not every coworker is going to have your best interest at heart.
Right.
But you have to be willing to talk to each other about these things, because it's one of those things where if you don't, it'll eat you alive. So that's my advice, is once those get full, you have to be willing to seek help. And unfortunately, that's hard for us, right? Because we're fixers.
Right.
By design, by job, we are fixers. We are supposed to be fixing other people's problems and not focusing on our own.
Right.
But you have to focus on your own, because if you don't, you're doing yourself a disservice. Why would you want to do that?
Right. If you're not healthy, how can you help everybody else become healthy?
Absolutely. Absolutely.
Yeah. Self care is very important, especially with this job. You have to take care of yourself before you can take care of everybody else.
It can definitely be draining too, and so it's really hard to pour from a cup that is empty.
Yeah.
If your personal cup is empty, you're not benefiting anybody by trying to pour into them, because you can't. You're exhausted. Rest is important. Rest for the mind and the body.
Right. Clinical care if you need it, obviously.
Absolutely. Can't be too prideful. Can't let that pride get in the way.
Yeah. I always say let go and let God, because pride ain't doing you no good.
Absolutely. Pride goes before the fall, is what the Bible says.
Yeah, that it does. So you
For
mentioned
sure.
imposter syndrome. What does that look like to you, and how do you fight against that?
So, for me, it was like, especially whenever I first became a medic, it was like, how did I even get here? I didn't want to do this in the first place, and now here I am. I'm in charge of somebody's patient care. I'm in charge of their lives, right? Like, the things that I do affect them in some way, be that positively or negatively.
Right.
So, I dealt with a lot of imposter syndrome, because it's like, I don't feel like I'm equipped to do this, because, I'm an intelligent guy. Like, I understand that. But at the same time, like, this is stuff that, was all foreign to me, 5 years ago, 10 years ago. And now here I am. You get thrown all of this information in paramedic school, right? All of this information. And it happened so fast, because, like, the program that I took was 10 months. And it happened so fast that it's like, when you come out of school, you have learned all of this information, and now you have to apply that. Like, you have to get it from here to here.
Mm-hmm.
But the difference is now you're not just talking with a mannequin. You're not assessing a mannequin. You're assessing a human being. Like, this is somebody's loved one that you're dealing with here. And so I just felt like I didn't belong at first, right? So, like, I don't belong here. I should probably just go back to working at a factory. I should go back to being a security guard. I should go back to, doing this stuff. And, it was one of those things where, like, everybody told me that it was going to work out and I was going to be fine. I didn't see it that way. I was this green, fresh paramedic, and, a lot of times the paramedics that are coming out of paramedic school, they think they've got it all figured out and they know everything. I was the exact opposite of that.
Right.
Brother, I don't know nothing. And now you want me to take care of people's families? Like, I don't know what to do with that. And so, every once in a while, I have that imposter syndrome rear its ugly head. Like, if you go a length of time and you're missing several IVs, and that happens, like, you go through dry spells. There are days that I couldn't hit the broadside of a barn with a baseball bat. And that's if you put me right up next to it. But, you have to understand that these things happen. Nobody is perfect. You're going to have an off day. And that's what I try to tell myself. It's not an excuse. It's just, I'm having an off day. Let's reset. Let's figure out what the problem is. And let's work that problem. Let's fix that problem. It's like, for me, if I know that there's an area that I'm weak in, I focus on that. I hone in on that. It doesn't help that I have an addictive personality anyway, but I focus and I hone in on those things. And I try to learn everything that I can about that one thing that I've been struggling with, or, had an issue with until I feel like I'm comfortable with that. I'm confident in that.
Right.
And so as you go on as a provider, you have to continue to learn. And that's one of the best ways to fight against imposter syndrome, is to understand your weak areas, get better in those weak areas, and just do the job to the best of your ability. As long as you're giving 100%, people aren't going to say anything. But you have to give your best 100% of the time. Because if you don't, then, it's going to work to the patient's detriment. That's not a good time.
No, you definitely don't want that.
No.
Now, you've talked about you've had a unique position to have a good support system at work. What does that look like, and how can we build better support at work in EMS?
So I do have a really good support system at work. So it's one of those places where, I work in very, very rural Missouri, like way out in the middle of nowhere. We cover 837 square miles with 2 ambulances and sometimes 3. We have a 10-hour truck that, it's a lot. And so when you're with these people for 24 hours at a time, and sometimes more, because there's always an open shift, there's always overtime available, there's always something that needs done, you get really close with people. I have the benefit of working with the same partner almost every shift, unless she's sick or has something that she needs to do. She's a fantastic partner. She knows what I need in the back of the ambulance, and she works to do that. I'm actually the supervisor on my shift, and the other 2 guys that are on my shift, Kevin and Jeff, they are fantastic people. I actually went to paramedic school with Jeff. We sat next to each other. We've been really close friends for the last 10 years. And so it's a really unique dynamic, because like a lot of places will say, oh, well, this is a family, but then they don't act like it. When we say we're a family, we are a family. My shift goes out and does things together. We go to movies. We go and, we go eat together. We hang out together. We're planning poker nights together. Things like that. And that's really, for most everybody at the service, that's the way that it is. Like, from the bosses all the way down, we're all really close. We're all really tight-knit. Everybody wants the best for you. And I think that there's something that can be learned from that as far as EMS goes, because there are a lot of agencies where you go to work, and I've worked at some of them. You go to work and everybody hangs out in their room all day, or they talk smack on everybody else, and that's just not beneficial. Like, no. If you got a problem with somebody, go talk to them.
Right.
Like, we're all adults. Like, for crying out loud, if you got a problem with me, come talk to me face to face.
Right.
The worst thing I'm going to tell you is to go lay down.
Right. Piss off, wanker.
Yeah, exactly. But I think that there needs to be more of that, like, open that firehouse dialogue mentality. Yes. And open dialogue, yes. Yeah. That's how we get better. That's how we become close, and that's how, like, it's going to help your mental health in the long run.
Right. So, I actually had an opportunity, because I was sitting there in my truck getting offloaded, and I just happened to come across your live feed on TikTok, and I was watching that. That's when I messaged you. So I know that your social media is heavily focused on EMS education. What inspired you to start that, and what impact do you hope to make with that?
So, from an educational standpoint, there are people on TikTok that do a fantastic job of educating on the clinical side. You've got people, and I'll shout them out because I love them to death. EMS Avenger, he's fantastic. He puts out a lot of evidence-based medicine information. Paramedic Sophie is another one that is phenomenal at it. that bossy paramedic girl is really good about all the, the national registry stuff and all of that. Like, she's your go-to for that. And then you've got the critical care side of the house. So you've got like Nurse Winnie and all of those. So they do a really good job with the clinical education aspect of it. So what I sought to do was, because I've always thought that we could make EMS better. We could bring EMS into the future. Because there's not a lot of people that want to do this job anymore. The average career expectancy for a paramedic is only 5 years these days.
Oh, wow.
And used to, you couldn't find a job because there were so many people that were doing it. And now jobs are a dime a dozen. If you have a paramedic license, you can literally go anywhere in the United States and walk onto a job. And so what I have tried to do is to shed a positive light on EMS and let people know what it is that we actually do. So education for me is letting them know what we actually do. Like, it's not what you see on TV. It's, it's not this glamorous lifestyle. It's this raw, gritty life. The things you see are going to stick with you.
Right.
The things you do are things that nobody else gets to do. And I guess one of the things that I want to do for this profession is, I've noticed that there's a lot of burnout and there's a lot of what we call salty people. Some of them are salty for the purposes of being cool. They think it's cool to be the jackass, I guess I'd say.
Yeah.
And so that trickles down to the people around them and their patient care. And so I feel like if we could change the perspective of our own people and get them to realize that this job is amazing if you just allow it to be. There is a quote that I love. It is, I'm going to see if I can quote it. If I can quote it completely, but it's from a book called People Care. It's by a paramedic named Tom Dick. He is phenomenal about the patient care, like human care aspect of it, like actually caring for people, which is something that I think that has been lost over the years. And he says, you're going to be there when a lot of people are born and when a lot of people die. You're welcomed into places where nobody else is welcomed into, with people that are having the worst day of their lives. And what an honor that is, he says. That's not verbatim, that's a paraphrase, but moments that are sacred is what he says. Is, the birth of a baby. That's a sacred moment in somebody's life.
It sure is.
Taking your last breath on this side of eternity, if you believe in eternity, and if you don't, still, taking your last breath on earth. That is such a sacred experience for people, and you get to be there when this stuff happens. It's an honor to do that. It is an honor for me to come to your house and take care of you as a patient. That's how I feel about the job, and that's the legacy that I want to leave behind. That's what I want people to see. I want to get back to the good of EMS. Yeah, there's a lot of bad, and I understand that. But there's also so much good if you just look for it.
Right. Yeah, I can imagine. I've never. The only thing I've ever been through is the births of my kids. So that was definitely a very emotional and great thing to go through. I couldn't imagine doing it with other people.
Well, I have had the unique pleasure of delivering 3 babies in the field. Yeah, so it was almost 4, and I'll tell this story real quick because this was the chillest kid that I'd ever seen. So they were coming from a neighboring area to go to the hospital to have this kid. The wife's water had broke. This is her second kid. she had it pretty quick. And by the time we got to her, they gave us the wrong address the first time. Not real sure where it probably got lost in translation. I'm not going to knock the dispatchers. Things happen. I get that.
Yeah.
But by the time we got there, here is this baby, and she is laying on her mom's leg, still attached to the umbilical cord, and she's just doing one of these numbers, looking up like, "Hey, bro, like it's
Hey.
cold. Can you wrap me up?"
Yeah. About time you showed
Like,
up.
yeah, exactly. Like I was warm 2 minutes ago, and now I'm cold. Can you help me out? She was the most alert baby that I'd ever seen.
Wow.
And so, those are the things that I enjoy about this job is I get to see things that nobody else gets to see.
Right.
And it's a unique perspective because I'm going into places that doctors and nurses don't go.
Right.
We meet people where they're at in the human condition. Wow. What an honor that is to be able to do.
Must be an amazing feeling.
There's a reason I've been at it as long as I have.
That speaks louder than words, let me tell you. So you're obviously passionate about mentorship. What do you think makes a great mentor in EMS?
A mentor is somebody that always wants what's best for you as a provider and as a person. So, as a mentor, the goal is to take somebody under your wing and show them what you know, teach them the right ways to do patient care and to care for people. There are, there are ways to go about that. The problem is not everybody is cut out to be a mentor. There's a difference between a preceptor and a mentor, right? So the preceptor is the guy that is going to, show you the ropes and get you through school. And then you have a mentor or somebody that is willing to invest time in you. I'm talking about a significant chunk of time, often years, to shape you into a provider. And sometimes being a mentor just means leading by example. So if I show up to work every day and I am angry and I am salty and I don't want to be there and I complain about every call that I go on, look, the bottom line is you're going to go on calls.
Right, that's your job.
You knew this. Can you imagine being a garbage man and getting mad every time you turn the corner when you were picking up garbage in the morning and there's a trash can sitting on the corner with garbage in it? You'd be miserable all the time. Like, this is what we do. And so you should expect to see patients. So if I had that mentality where I'm, I don't want to be there, then I'm probably not going to make a good mentor because what I'm going to do is my negativity is going to rub off on whoever I am supposed to be mentoring.
Right.
And that's not good enough. So, as a mentor, you have to be willing to lead by example, to show these people, whenever I was coming up, there was this mentality, and I'm sure that you've had to deal with it over the course of your life too, where, we didn't show anybody everything that we knew because the idea was that, if you do that, they'll get promoted over you and they'll outshine you. Who gives a crap? But that was the mentality, and that's the way that it's been for how long now?
Yeah.
But now we are, as mentors, we are in a unique position to shape the next generation, and that's what we should be seeking to do.
Right.
I want to shape providers that I would welcome into my home to take care of my family, because if I can't say that the person I'm mentoring is 100% confident, or I am 100% confident in them coming to take care of my family, then I have done them and every other patient out there a disservice.
Right.
So that's what mentorship is to me.
Yeah, I totally agree with you. I wasn't really like a mentor, but I trained a lot of guys in different aspects, like operating forklifts, machinery, and I've trained a lot of young kids how to drive semi trucks, and it takes a lot of patience. one of my most successful younger gentlemen, he actually became a truck driver. We were just yard dogs at the Menards Distribution Center in Holiday City, Ohio. He never drove a manual semi before. And he had it down, and his aspiration was to become a truck driver. And I told him, I will teach you everything there is to know. I want you to be the best that you can possibly be. And he is totally successful at it. That makes me proud because I did my job.
Yeah, that's an awesome feeling to know that you had a hand in shaping somebody's future.
Right.
It's another one of those honors.
Yeah. Yep.
It's all about perspective.
I've helped a lot of guys in a lot of ways like that, and I don't keep in contact with them, but I imagine that they're doing pretty good. A lot of the guys that I helped are still working in the same place. They've gotten better.
That's awesome. I love it whenever my previous orientees and students call me whenever they have a question. Like, hey man, I've got an EKG that I'm not sure about. Can you take a look at it and tell me what you think? And so I'm very open with them, like, hey, if you need me, call me. There's some that will ask me questions about the ventilator because it's something that I really enjoy is, mechanical ventilation, and I'm trying to learn everything that I can about it. And so I'm like, okay, well, if this isn't working, let's tweak this, and this. And like, oh, well, that works. So, even after you're done training them, you can still be open to helping them out whenever they need it. So,
absolutely, yeah.
That's my favorite part of it.
Right. Still being their support system.
Mm-hmm.
Now, you wanted to end stigma around EMS workers and being an outcast and underpaid. What changes would you like to see in the industry?
So yeah, there has long been this stigma about EMS. It's not. I don't guess it's a stigma to the public, but it is to our fellow public safety workers and doctors and nurses. We're kind of an afterthought. As we joke around, the bastard stepchildren of public safety. There's not a lot of funding for EMS. And, realistically speaking, we are still a very new job. We are a very new career path, a very new occupation. Because the earliest that you can trace what we do now back is 1967 to Pittsburgh, Pennsylvania, and Freedom House Ambulance. And that was staffed by all black men, with Nancy Caroline as a medical director and Peter Saffer, who is what they consider the father of CPR, training these people to do the things that we're doing now, years before we thought to do it.
Right.
And so, back then, how we came about is, just to give you a little bit of context, is we came about with what was called the white paper. It was a paper about accidental death and dismemberment on the highways. The National Highway Traffic Safety Administration, NHTSA, actually put this out with the Department of Transportation. And in the 60s, you had a better chance of surviving Vietnam than you did the highway. And so they developed this white paper, and then basically, let's bring care to these traumatic events and injuries. Places like California took it and ran with it. LA County had a paramedic program. I believe Cincinnati, Ohio also had one. Miami, Florida did. And so that's kind of where we started. But we still fall under the DOT's regulations. And I think that there is a misconception somewhere about what it is that EMS actually does. Case in point, former New York Mayor Bill de Blasio actually is on record, and I can send you the video of him saying that the work that EMS does is different, and so that's the difference between the gap of pay between FDNY firefighters and FDNY EMS, which is exactly like this. Like, here's fire, here's EMS.
Wow.
And so we have to educate people on what it is that we're doing. Maybe that means we have to get out from under the DOT. I don't ever see that happening, but we need somebody somewhere on Capitol Hill to hear us and be like, hey, listen, we are essential. We are relevant. We are doing a job that nobody wants to do. We're seeing things differently. We're transporting patients up and down the road while providing top-class medical care to them. I think some of that gets lost in translation, and so I would love to see more. As far as the changes, I would like to see more public outreach, right? Because historically speaking, EMS is bad about not being able to do public outreach, and a lot of that comes back to the time that we have to do so, because we're constantly on the go. We're constantly running here, there, and everywhere for emergencies, and then you add interfacility transports and things like that, and we don't really have a whole lot of time to get out in the public and educate them about what we do.
Right.
And I think that that's where the social media thing is. We're in a key time in the lifespan of EMS, right? Because we have a medium now, a platform to put what we do out there. And so that was the whole reason that I wasn't even going to do TikTok. Like, I just started in December, and I think I just hit like 3763 on followers, something like that. So I mean, that's a lot of growth in a short amount of time. So people are hearing, and people want to hear this stuff. And I just want to get everybody to realize that, especially the doctors and nurses, we are on the same team. We do the same job. I just do it in a moving box at 70 miles an hour with less people.
That seems a lot harder than it would be doing it in the hospital.
I mean, I wouldn't take anything away from those doctors and nurses. They have a lot of schooling. They have a lot of science and intelligence that backs them up. I think that they do a great job most of the time. I think that sometimes they don't understand exactly what EMS is all about. It's one of those, hey, did you get an IV? Did you do this? Yes. What do you think it is? Well, I think it's this. Well, we think not. Blah, blah, blah. And then, there's a lot of that goes on. Or my favorite is, why did you bring this here? Well, I don't know. Maybe because the H out front says hospital? I mean,
hello?
Stands to reason to me, but, it is what it is. I just want to see us get better about working together. We are on the same team.
Yeah, you guys are definitely essential. And you're like the first line right there before people make it to the hospital. I mean, you're their caregivers. You're taking over their, essentially their lives. You're caring for their well-being until they are brought to their destination at the hospital.
Absolutely. People don't. I understand people don't need an ambulance. They need a hospital. That's what they need. Definitive care. But if not for the ambulance, how would they get there?
Right.
Who would get them over the hump in the meantime?
Right. So. Who's going to stabilize and, make sure they get there safely so they can get the care that they need.
And there are a lot of things that we can do in the back of an ambulance. And, with this, the next topic that we're going to talk about, like, I'll talk about some of that stuff. There's stuff that people don't even know that we do.
Yeah. Right. The puppy. He's a pit bull.
Always.
Yeah, yep. We got him too. He's a brat.
Yep, that's Cooper.
Yeah.
He likes to be the star of the show.
Yeah, looks like it. Yeah.
I promise when I'm done with this, I'll take you outside, okay? Now go.
No, I want to go now.
I know, right? Get out of here, you dork.
Now, talking about stewardship of resources is the most important to you. What does that mean in EMS, and how can first responders apply that in their careers?
So you are given resources and things to do your job, but you have to be proficient with those things, right? You have to know how to operate your equipment. You have to know how to intubate if you're a paramedic. You have to know the things. So you have to know pharmacology, right? It's imperative that you understand what you're doing back there, because otherwise what happens is you get in this mindset, right? And you see these patients and you know that this is a checkbox, right? I'm just going to check this box. I'm going to check this box. If you don't understand the why of what you're doing, then you're not being a good steward of the calling that's been placed upon you.
Yes.
So intubation, for example, that has been a hot topic of discussion for the last several years, because historically our success rates in EMS are low. Usually that equates to poor technique or, difficult airway anatomy. But, that's why assessment is so important, because then you can tell, you have this idea about, is this going to be a difficult airway? Is intubation where I want to go with this? Or do I have something that I can do to get them to a place where the hospital is going to be a better place to tube them? So you have to be willing to learn your protocols, first of all, because that's what we operate on. Like, this physician has signed off on these things that we get to do. But if you screw it up too many times, then they're going to take that away from us, and we're not going to be able to do what we need to do.
Right.
Intubation, we do needle decompression of the chest. So if somebody has a tension pneumothorax, we can place a needle either in the midclavicular or anterior axillary line and reinflate that lung. If we have a situation where we can't intubate and we can't ventilate somebody, we can do a surgical crike. Now, we don't do it with ink pens like they do it in the TV shows. We don't do that. Basically, it just involves using a scalpel and cutting the cricothyroid membrane, opening that up. It's a surgical procedure that we get to do in the back of the ambulance, and I've done 2. But if you don't practice it, if you're not a good steward of that, then you're not doing us any favors. You're actually doing a disservice, and you're probably going to kill your patient whenever you try to do this stuff.
Right.
We do a really good job of shooting ourselves in the foot. Like, we do. Both with the care that we provide or don't provide in a lot of cases, or, just doing the bare minimum to get by. So if you are working in this career, and I cannot stress this enough, make it a point to know, be like Sid the Science Kid. That's what I always compare myself to. There's a PBS show called Sid the Science Kid. If you're listening out there and you don't know who I'm talking about, he's a kid on PBS that wants to know everything about everything. Be that person. You'll never be that person completely, because you'll never know everything about everything. And the second you think you do, it's probably time to move on. No, it's definitely time to move on. But know your equipment, know your protocols, understand the why, and apply it accordingly. That's the best thing you can do for yourself and for your patient, because you are handling the life of somebody's loved one.
Yeah.
Cannot stress that enough. Cannot stress that enough.
Now, looking forward, your goal is to become a flight medic with critical care. What draws you to that role?
So it's an extension of what we already do on the ground, right? But it's with added things. So where I'm at in this rural area, you're pretty much a critical care paramedic, whether you really want to be or not, because you may not have the certification, but you're managing a ventilator, somebody that's intubated. You're managing multiple drips. You're managing multiple medications, multiple injuries, multiple illnesses, all at the same time. And I've always been a thinker, right? So, like, that's how my mind works. My mind is constantly going. I have ADHD, like most of us that do this job do. And so it keeps my mind occupied. But with the flight medic thing, you see the worst of the worst, and when what needs to be done exceeds the scope of a ground unit, that's when you come in. Or when they need rapid transport someplace else to a specialty center or whatever. So you're managing balloon pumps, arterial lines, all of this stuff. And I've always been so fascinated by medicine, especially critical care. Why I didn't go to med school, I'll never know. Probably because I didn't feel like I was smart enough for it. I still don't feel like I'm smart enough for it. But, you know, that's what draws me to that. Is I want to be the one that shows up because I know that I have the passion for helping people.
Right.
I have the desire to be the medic that you would want taking care of your family. That is my... Every time I get that compliment, and I've gotten it several times, some people disagree, but it is what it is. Every time I get that compliment, like, I'm so glad that it was you, or I would let you work on my family, that is just phenomenal. Right. Phenomenal. I can't tell you how good that makes me feel. So that was what kind of drew me to that role. And, you know, it's an advancement in my career. It's an advancement in my skill level. I'm constantly looking for, and even if I don't get on a flight job somewhere, it's only going to make me a better, more well-rounded provider, which is what I want.
Yeah, I can imagine that's a huge honor to, you know, have that much, you know, what's the word I'm thinking of? That, you know, that much encouragement from somebody and faith that somebody's saying, hey, you did a hell of a job. If anything happens to me again or my family, I want you to be there. That's an achievement. Imagine that makes you feel
Absolutely. And it sure doesn't happen every day, but when it does, it's amazing.
Okay. So now, what advice would you give someone new in EMS who is struggling with self-doubt or burnout?
I would first start by telling you you're not alone. I think we all go through this at some point or another, especially the self-doubt thing. Mind your mental health. That's the advice that I would give you first and foremost. Understand what is going on inside you and don't be afraid to tell somebody. If you are burned out, then what's going to happen is that's going to trickle down to your patients and every interaction that you have with anybody for the rest of the time that, you know, you're there. So when you recognize the symptoms of burnout, when you recognize that you're becoming disenchanted with the job, when you recognize that maybe you're not treating your patients appropriately because you don't think that they're having a legitimate medical issue, and it happens, it does. It's just one of those things. Burnout happens. Nobody is immune to it. You'll never be immune to it. But you have to recognize what's going on inside you, and you have to be willing to say, hang on a second, I need a break, I need to take some time off, I need to seek therapy, whatever is going to help you. And sometimes you don't need to do any of that. Sometimes it's just as simple as meditating, getting a good mental reset, or, you know, talking to a really good friend that also does the job. Somebody else's perspective can help you.
Yeah, sometimes it is helpful to have a different perspective on things.
Absolutely. And so surround yourself. Here's another piece of advice for you. Surround yourself with people that aren't afraid to call you out. Sometimes we need called out. Like, hey, you're screwing up, bro. Like, do better. Like, this is what I'm seeing. And then if you find yourself, if they come to you and they tell you that, and you find yourself, oh, no, that's not me, I'm not doing that. Yeah, you probably are.
You're in denial.
Yes, absolutely.
Yeah, denial is not the river in Egypt.
Uh-uh. No, and nobody likes to be called out. Nobody likes to be held accountable, but we need that. That's how we grow.
Right. Especially in this kind of line of work because people's lives are at stake.
Absolutely. Absolutely.
Now, in closing, where can people connect with you and learn more about your work in EMS education?
So I have a TikTok. It is at RedBeard the Medic. I try to post a video once a day, once every couple of days. I also do live feeds, which we've already mentioned. I try to do one of those once a day. Sometimes in the evening when I'm at work. Sometimes I'll even go live from the ambulance while I'm on the way back from a transfer or a call. Uh, so there, I also have an Instagram. It is RedBeard the Medic underscore because there's another RedBeard the Medic out there. And when I find you, I'm taking my name back because there's one RedBeard the Medic, and that's this guy.
That's just there, right there.
I also have a YouTube, which is also at RedBeard the Medic that we're working on. We're not there yet, but we're working on it little by little.
Okay.
So there's also been talks of a podcast in the works. I don't know what's going to happen with that yet. It's a discussion. So those are the places that you can find me. I also have a Facebook page that I try to cross post things to. It's also
Hmm.
RedBeard the Medic. So everything is RedBeard the Medic. So
Right.
if you're
Well,
looking for me, you can find me.
if you do start a podcast, if you need any help or any pointers, just let me know.
I
Maybe
appreciate that.
Brianne and I can kind of assist you on that.
I would absolutely enjoy that.
So, uh, now looking back, what is the biggest lesson you've learned from your journey so far?
The biggest lesson that I've learned from the journey so far is that I'm human. I am not immune to emotions. I am not immune to messing up. And I have to give myself some grace. That's a hard thing to do. My past does not define who I am today. I have struggled to give my younger self grace. I have tried to do that, but, up until recently, I wasn't able to. I hated younger me because of the things that he went through that I still pay for today. But I realized that that's all a part of the journey, and that has shaped where I'm at today. The man that I am today is because of the lessons I learned back then. So that's the biggest thing for me. Is that that's the biggest lesson is that I need to give myself some grace, and I mean, spend more time with your family because it's important.
Yeah, definitely. Is there
Making up
anything
for lost
else?
time is not fun.
Yeah, I mean, trust me, I'm right in that situation, and it is not fun. It's been a blessing that I've been able to try to get to know my daughters, and they don't hold any animosity towards me because they know that I've always tried to have a relationship with them, even though I
Yeah,
wasn't there
that's
when they needed
fantastic.
me the most. But they know that I was there and I was trying, you know, making my attempts to. So they still love me in their own way.
Hey, sometimes that's all you can ask for, as long as they love you.
Yeah. Now, is there anything that you'd like to leave for our listeners? Any words of encouragement, advice, or a message to your fellow EMS workers?
Yes, absolutely. The first thing that I would tell you is to just enjoy the ride. Don't take it for granted. You are in a unique position to do something for somebody that they can't do for themselves. It's hard, and we know that. But you're not alone. We've all been there. We all struggle, but we do the best we can. Try each day to do something kind for somebody else. be kind to each other, but also remember to be kind to yourself.
Right.
Give yourself room to grow. Give yourself room to make mistakes. Give yourself some grace, because it's important that you be here. There's a reason you were called to this job. There's a reason why you keep zipping your boots up and you get on that ambulance, that fire truck, that helicopter, uh, that police car, put on the military uniform, whatever it is that you do. Do it with all that you have and understand that what you do is important. And somebody somewhere is thankful that you're still here. As for my EMS workers, don't be the salty guy that comes to work every day and is miserable and makes everybody else miserable. Spend time getting to know people. Try to connect with your patients and make them feel better, even if you know that the outcome is not going to be what they want. It's just better for everybody that way.
Right.
And most of all, if you need help, reach out to somebody.
Right.
Somebody is always willing to listen. That's what I would say.
Yeah, I imagine if you're the salty person in the bunch, you might want to step back and do some reflection and think about what's going on in your life that's making you feel salty, and maybe get help, and maybe try to change your
Absolutely.
mindset. That's not
Absolutely.
that's not an easy life to live, being miserable and salty all the time.
No,
That'll eat you alive.
that's for sure. I've seen it time and time again. That's why people wash out so much, is because they get disenchanted. That's the first step, and then they become burned out and they're just miserable and they just don't want to do it anymore. But I always felt like if they had a chance to step back and renew their perspective, that maybe that's when the game changes.
Yeah. One thing I would like to say to our listeners, if you are not following, you should follow RedBeard the Medic on TikTok. He's an awesome person, very knowledgeable. He could be a great mentor to you if you just watch his lives, connect with him, make comments, just follow him. I mean, that's how I got connected with him, is I just followed him uh, when I started watching his lives, and it was very interesting, and I learned quite a bit. And it was kind of a great uh, experience for me, being somebody who is not medically trained. I still was pretty interested in learning a lot of that stuff, and it helped bring quite a bit of stuff to light. So, uh, for those of you listening, I would encourage you to follow them. Uh, that being said, I really appreciate you being on here, Redbeard the Medic. You are an awesome and amazing dude. Have a lot of honor and respect for you and what you do. I hope you become that flight medic, because you're going to help save a lot of people.
I appreciate that. Thank you for having me on. I've really enjoyed the conversation. It's not often that I get to, have conversations like this, and so it's fantastic when I get a chance to.
Right, right.
I appreciate you immensely.
You're definitely welcome, and I appreciate you for being on here and having the courage to come on and speak your piece, and just airing it out for people to hear, because some of the topics might have been hard. Uh, I know you guys deserve a lot more than what you get.
Yeah, I think so. I think that a lot of it just boils down to misunderstanding, and I think that sometimes EMS works to its own detriment. So it's one of those things where we can change it, we can we can move it forward, but it's going to take enough of us speaking up. And right now, like, there are people that aren't happy with the status quo, but they don't say anything.
Right.
can't expect change if you don't say anything, and so I'll be the one to speak up. I'll be the squeaky wheel.
Okay, just let it out, speak out, and say something. Like obviously, squeaky wheel gets the grease, and you guys definitely deserve a lot more pay than what you get because you do a lot more than what people see.
We appreciate that. I think I speak for all of us when I say we appreciate that.
Yeah. Yeah. So, again, I definitely really appreciate you being on here. It's been an honor. I enjoyed the conversation. Um, Hopefully, we'll get back together again sometime, and we'll kind of check in with you later. Maybe do another interview, see how far you've come in the future. Um,
Yeah, I'm
no,
always open.
yeah, pretty busy all the time, but any chance I get, I'll if you're ever live and I'm not busy, I'll get on there and watch.
I appreciate the support. I really do. Thank you
I'll be your
for
number one fan.
allowing me to. I appreciate that. I really do. It's it's fantastic that this TikTok thing is made it to where we can connect with people, and so I made really good friends. I that respect goes both ways, brother. I appreciate what you're trying to do as well. I will support you until you decide that you no longer want to do it.
Right. Definitely appreciate it. And just remember, the more you share your broadcast, the more your voice will be heard. You know. So
Oh, I'll share it. All right, it'll definitely get out there for sure.
I
I've
mean,
got people that are waiting on it. So
we've only been a couple months into this thing ever since the beginning of the year, and we've already got news coverage. We
I
don't know
saw that.
how that
That's
happened, but
fantastic.
it was mind blowing. I when Brienne said that Kaylee wanted to come interview, and I'm like, "What? Who's Kaylee?" She's like, Lexington. Like, get out of here! Don't lie to me. You're just messing with me. That's not right. I thought she was just BS. Like serious, she really does. I was like, no, that's fake. That's got to be fake. But no, that was, as you can see in the TikTok, that was the real thing.
That was awesome too. It was so good to see that. You
Yeah,
guys need to have your voices heard too. The stories that you're putting out there need to be heard. I think that people would understand the first responder lifestyle a whole lot better, um, and understand your why. I actually did some digging to figure out what your why was, and that's man, I couldn't imagine.
yeah, yeah. That was kind of a hard situation to deal with, but I felt like you know, like somebody had to stand up, and a lot of my family they don't. I mean, I'm not the most social person in the world, and I'm usually the shy person in the family. Uh, but something inside of me said that I needed to stand up and say something and do something in honor of my cousin because he meant a lot to me. Even though him and I didn't have the closest relationship, I loved and respected everything that he did. And he was somebody that I wanted, that I looked up to.
Absolutely,
So,
absolutely.
and I know that, his wife, she's going through a hard time and she's dealing with her things. And, uh, you know, I'd been on the news before when during the vigil, and normally if somebody would have asked me, "You want to be on the news?" I'd be like, "No, heck no, get out of here." Uh, but
Fair.
for some reason that day, something came over me, and I did not give it a second thought. And I was getting interviewed, and then the next guy came and wanted to do an interview, so I interviewed with him, and then Brianne and I talked about doing a podcast. And I was like, you know what? I struggled with that for a little bit, and I just didn't know how it would go. And it was like a burning desire. It was in my gut. I said, you have to do it. You have to do this. And I was like, you know what? I'm going to do it. So I just started buying equipment. We bought a course and we started doing it. we didn't know exactly how far it would go, but we're a few months in, and it seems to be doing fairly well.
Yeah, usually when you have an inclination like that, there's some meat behind that. So
Right, right. Looks like your fuzzy little friend there wants to go outside.
both of them do. I got both of them over here.
It's like, Daddy, let me out.
You ready to go
Yeah,
outside, dork?
yeah, it's a pretty little meathead there. Yep, he wants to
Yeah,
go out.
he's a big dork.
Yeah. All right, buddy. Well, definitely appreciate you being on here. God bless you, and love your mutts there. They're beautiful.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, there's something. We're thankful for him. Thank you for
Yeah,
having me on. Thanks for the good conversation. I really appreciate you.
yeah. Don't ever uh, feel like if you need to talk, feel free to reach out and send us an email or whatever. If you want my number, I'll give you my
Likewise.
number. You can text me or whatever. Say hi.
Likewise.
Keep in touch.
Definitely. Definitely.
All right, buddy. Well, I'll say goodbye here and let you get on with your business tonight.
All right, brother. Well, you have a good night. You're working tomorrow. Be safe.
Yep. Thank you. I appreciate that. Thank you for joining us on 8158 Stories of Sacrifice. Every story we share is a tribute to the courage and resilience of first responders and their families. If this episode impacted, encouraged, or inspired you, please subscribe, leave a review, and share with someone who supports first responders. Follow us on all social media platforms at 8158 Podcast for updates. 8158 Stories of Sacrifice is a team effort. Rico brings the stories to life through casting, writing, original music, and editing. Brianne Shipley as production manager, handling booking, social media, graphics, promotion, marketing, website management, and logo design. Please visit our website at 8158podcast.com. For questions, collaborations, or to share your story, our email address is contactus@8158podcast.com. Until next time, let's continue to honor the legacies and remember the sacrifices of those who serve, every brave man and woman on the front lines, protecting and defending us all. This is Rico signing off and honoring 8158.